Good afternoon, Quilt Roadies. Well, it is a beautiful day in the neighborhood, absolutely beautiful. And other than the run-of-the-mill for G and I asthma symptoms, we are all recovered. He is actually out on a hike by himself. We've both been, kind of in lockdown, so the fact that we're able to get out and have it be this beautiful is just icing on the cake. And thank you all so much for your well wishes for our quick recovery. It was great. It was great. And in some ways, it was that timing where it makes you have to slow down and figure out. I actually sat one day we were, well, not one day, every day we're sitting next to each other, and I said, it's a good thing we like each other because 24/7 for a week is like, wow, you have got to be okay with who you're going to be with. Let me just tell you. And we definitely have lucked out in that respect. But we both are asthma sufferers, and so hence the voice sounds a little bit on the funny side. But, I've had asthma forever. I am enjoying this new flavor of Polar. Look at that. I got excited when I saw this strawberry watermelon. I'm a big watermelon fan. So I had not seen this particular flavor until we went to the store today. So that was like, yay! Who would have thought going to the grocery store would be so much fun? Yeah, it's been quite the journey here. So what has happened because of that? Well, when you are stuck in your home, I shouldn't say stuck. I mean, there are worse places to be stuck. But when you have to stay home and you don't really feel horrible, you've made that initial hump to recovery, and now you're just biding your time, watching, as I told you before, watching the Netflix series Hoarders. It absolutely freaked me out, and I understand what a challenging disorder that is, and it was interesting to actually see or to understand that this really was a mental condition, and in reality, some people don't. They're forced to do the declutter because either building code or city or county codes or health organizations got involved. It wasn't like they suddenly woke up and said, oh, I'm going to kind of declutter my house. No, that wasn't what was going on here. And I actually have never, only once have I ever been into someone's home that was a hoarder, and that was, gosh, maybe over 20 plus years ago, and my younger son and I were delivering Thanksgiving meals from an organization that I belong to, and we went to an apartment and knocked on the door. I might have told you this already before because it really has stuck in my head. But he was holding the turkey in the pan, and I had all the other fixings. And when this woman opened the door, she was so happy to see us. But literally, the entryway, the hallway into her apartment was lined on both sides, all the way up to almost the ceiling, so that, and my son's really tall, so he literally had to hold the pan with the turkey and kind of carry it into the main living area above his head to get it in there. And then there was only one spot that was free, and that's the spot that she occupied. And that was the thing about the show, was that a lot of these people occupy only a 4-foot square. It's where they sit, they sleep, and they eat. And so she had to kind of move things around so that we could set the food down on the counter. I remember just having such empathy for her and not truly understanding what was going on, as much as now we are more familiar. But that's not here nor there. The reason that I'm telling you this is because after watching that, I was like looking around, and let me tell you, looking around, and I decided to do some decluttering. And I told you this last time. So I called up my girlfriend and I said, you know, she has such an amazing heart and makes Bienvenidos quilts and quilts for kids for the community she lives in. And so I asked her, I said, I'm not dumping on you if you don't want it, but I have decided that I'm going to go through all of my quilting fabric that I have piled up and pull out the things that I think you could use or I wouldn't use. It's interesting because my progress in quilting has changed over the years. When I first started quilting, there was nothing called a kit when I first started quilting. That was later. That came along later. So in the beginning, it was a matter of choosing fabrics off the bolt. There wasn't even all those pre-cuts yet. And so it was choosing fabric off the bolt that you liked. And the woman I learned how to quilt from, her theory, of course she owned a shop, her theory was if you like the fabric, buy a yard. If you love the fabric, buy 3 yards. And so that's how myself and my quilt group kind of grew. And then slowly the more and more patterns came along, and then you tried to buy fabrics that went together for a quilt. Also groups of fabrics like Civil War fabrics or 30s fabrics. You tried to accumulate a stash. Yeah. And so that's how we purchased fabric when I started. And then later on, then you started seeing the kits, and then my girlfriend Lori and I, who really, we liked to shop for whole lines of fabric but didn't want to spend the money on whole lines, would buy the pre-cuts, like the 5-inch squares of a whole line of fabric, so we could make a table runner. We were table runner queens. So now my quilting has changed. I'm not doing as many scrappy quilts as I used to do. I do buy kits, so it comes with all the fabric that would make up the quilt that's on the cover of whatever package. And So I decided I was just going to purge. So my fabric is all in these lower shelves, and I could not believe. So I started pulling out the fabrics, and the way I fold them is I fold them to a size of a fat quarter, like when you go in the shop to buy a fat quarter. So what I do is I use my 6 by 8 inch ruler, so no piece is bigger than 8 inches long and 6 inches wide. And I wrap it around the ruler and then I pull the ruler out. So literally all the fabric is the same size and stacks nicely on the shelf. And then I have it by themes. So I have solids, let's say. So all the solids are in one spot, and all the stripes are in one spot, and all the cream colored fabric or beige fabric are all in one spot, and then the black fabrics are all in one spot, and the novelty prints. So it's getting more organized, but what's amazing to me is I must have be jamming the fabric in there when we moved here, because I have a huge pile of fabric that is going to my girlfriend, and these piles are still tall. It's like they needed air. They needed air. But what was interesting to me is that I found a piece that I had no idea where I got it from. In fact, let me see, I'm going to step away. You can look at all you want back there, and I'm going to try to find the salvage of it so I can share it with you. And it was a pre-printed panel, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to make this before my grandkids grow up. So here's the pre-printed panel. I'm going to hold it up. It's absolutely adorable. So, grandparents' rules. And then it says, look at how adorable all that is. So this panel was stuck in my shelf. I have no idea where I got it from, but I had to, it caused me to move to a hyper-focused state. So I immediately stopped the chaos, and yesterday, decided I needed to find a border, and I thought, oh, I have to make some kind of piece border. But then in the fabric, I found this fabric that was already pre-printed, like a bunch of different fabrics. So I cut out strips for the border, and then I put a backing on it. I quilted it with fusible batting, and you can Google Quilt Roadie's fusible batting, and I go through a step-by-step how I use fusible batting. And then I made the binding, and now I'm tacking the binding. So as we sit here and chit-chat with each other, I'm going to be tacking the binding down so I can hang this up downstairs for when my grandkids come over. But look at this. It was hidden in there, and I had no idea. So it makes me think that every so often we need to mix it up or reorganize, because in the reorganization we're gonna find a jewel. We're just gonna find a jewel. And so this particular panel, just so in case you can find it someplace, is a Timeless Treasure Fabrics of Soho. So here you go. You can stop this and take a look at that. I don't know if it's still available, but look at that salvage has the hearts. So now as we sit here and chatter, I'm going to finish binding this so that I can hang it up downstairs before my grandchildren come over tomorrow. Yeah. Well, that was kind of a babble fest, wasn't it? The last time we talked, I was talking about the quilt that I'm making for my sister's oldest grandson, who next year will be off to college. Hard to believe. And my sister and I spent a lot of time talking about how our mother used to we definitely were a traveling family. I was watching The Amazing Race. You know, when you're stuck at home, you've got to, I'm not much of a soap opera watcher, and, I kind of am pretty picky about my reality shows, but I hadn't seen The Amazing Race in a long time, so I decided to take a look at it. And I got hooked on the last season. And they were going through, one of the countries they were going through was Slovenia. And I turned to G and I said, I've been to Slovenia. And so I went and got my photo album book of my most, well, it wasn't the most recent trip to Europe, but it was a trip that I took with my younger son and my mother. And I have shared this with you before, I believe, but we traveled with our backpacks, and she had a little rolling suitcase and no itinerary. So we didn't have any itinerary. All we had was a Eurail pass and a airline ticket. So we landed in Paris, and from the moment we landed, we would decide where to go next or try to find a hotel. And so due to some missteps in the planning, we ended up in Slovenia. So it was really fun on The Amazing Race to look at that country again. And on that particular trip, just to show you how crazy it was, we traveled through 12 different countries. It was unbelievable, without any reservations anywhere, no pre-reservations. We would show up in a country and in the train station, because we had a Eurail pass, and then in all the train station there'd be like a kiosk. And back then, which is really funny, in some of these countries, when you think about Slovenia as such a young country, the train station would have a binder in a kiosk that had hotels, and you'd flip through and decide where you wanted to stay. It was, I can't believe it, But I'm tired. I'm tired now, and the thought of traveling with my grandkids like that. And so my sister and I were talking about it, that why was our mother able to do that with her grandkids, but we are like, the thought of it is like daunting. And so in the discussion, we realized that our generation, for the most part, not 100%, for the most part, had children at a younger age. So my mother was a younger grandmother, whereas my children had their kids at an older age. They're in their 30s when they're starting to have families, or their 40s. So the grandparents are much older, and the thought of traveling with a backpack through 12 countries without a reservation and is just daunting. So I guess the discussion was to try to make ourselves feel better. How did I get off on that tangent? Anyway, I'm making this quilt for my sister's oldest grandson when he goes to college. And I told you before, it was out of Sweetwater Fabrics. And so I finished all the blocks. So each fabric in the Fat Quarter Shop's kit or box has had a ton of fat quarters in it for the whole line. And so you cut out two 8-inch squares, and then you made two 9 patches, so out of the squares in white fabric. So I have made all of the 9 patches. I've cut out all of the 8-inch squares, and now the next step will be to actually put it all together. And that won't be happening for a little while because I am actually traveling this next week by myself down to my sister's so that I can go watch this particular grandson of hers. He has the leading role in, one of the leading roles in Phantom of the Opera. So I'm going to see that performance. But here's all the blocks and everything is ready to sew together for this dorm quilt, which is just going to be a little throw. I'm looking forward to putting that together when I get back. Yes, so I told you about my favorite drink. Well, my favorite drink this week. The quilting, Stitching with the Sisterlies are working on their quilt tube, which was very exciting. And so we had a little Zoom session for them to test out the logistics of doing Zooms with the Facebook group. So if you're interested in joining the Facebook group, go on Facebook with Stitching with the Sisterlies, and there'll be a group sign up for that. And it's just another way for us to connect and to encourage each other for quilting and what to do with our fabrics and what we might like to do. So do that. Do that if you want to have some fun. As I have weeded through the pile, and the pile is over here, and started making some organizing the fabrics on what I might use, and like I have a lot of Harry Potter, the Harry Potter fabric line. I have, I like a lot of graphic fabrics, so if fabric has writing on it, it's really hard for me not to buy it because I like that graphic look to it. So I'm going to finish that hopefully today. I did have a pile down below, which is backing fabrics that I bought from the So Yeah Brothers on one of their YouTube sales, which are always a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to actually going through my Asian fabrics because that, as I told you before, I'm taking that class with Scott Hansen, Blue Nickel Studios, during Quilter's Affair in Sisters, Oregon, for his trees. And I am going to make that out of Asian fabrics as a ode to my maternal family. So I'm really looking forward to that. I was asked a couple of questions, so I wanted to address that. One was a couple people asked about the difference between the soft fuse and the flexi fuse and the SF101. So soft fuse and flexi fuse are a fusible product that you use to fuse two pieces of any kind of fabric together. So it has a paper backing on it that gets peeled off. Once you've adhered it to one piece, you peel the paper backing off and you fuse it to the other piece. So I use it for wool applique to hold my wool down on the background. Well, I travel and I can stitch, or any kind of, if you didn't do needle turn applique but fusible applique, you do that, use those same products. And so it has a paper backing, both sides are sticky, and it's to put two pieces together. The SF101 is a fusible interfacing, so it comes by the yard, and it feels like a lightweight interfacing, very soft, flexible, and it has fusible only on one side of it. So it's to provide stability to whatever you're stitching. So what I do is I use it on the back of my wool applique if I'm using like a cotton or a wool, flannel as the background piece and then wool on top. I'll use that SF101 on the back of that to give it more stability and not make the fabric stretch so much as I'm stitching. I will also use it when I embroider. I will put it on the back of my embroidery, my cotton piece that I'm actually embroidering, because I can travel on the back without it being seen through, and it does keep me from puckering by pulling my embroidery thread too tight, because you're just, and if you find it hard to needle through, it's because your needle is dull. I have never had a problem needling through any fabric that has that SF101 on the back. I started to have my brain was thinking of something else and I was still talking. I'm continue to look. I'm going to go get something. So, as an example, I am doing this stitch along with Kathy Schmitz. It's you can get the stitch along in 3 different colors on Spoonflower, and someone in the Facebook group asked about Spoonflower, ordering fabrics from them, and I have ordered fabrics, and some of them do feel a little different than your regular run-of-the-mill cotton. But so Kathy's doing this program where you just have to embroider one motif each month. So we've already done January here, and then we've done February, and then come March we will move down to March. On this particular piece I have attached SF101 to the back, so there's a layer fused onto the back of this cotton. That way when I'm stitching I can carry the thread and you won't see it through the front, and it just adds a little bit more stability to the product. So that's when I use SF101, and I buy it by the bolt because I use it so much. I use it in my wool, in my embroidery. Yeah, I just use a ton of it. And when you buy a bolt at Joann's, you automatically get 40% off. So I usually just buy a bolt and just have it here, you know, for when I need it. Okay, so answered that question. Now the next question was, what's that dark hook that's behind you hanging on your quilt rack? Does anyone have the answer? It's called a theracane, and it looks like this. It's a physical therapy tool, and so you can get it at any, I would think, I'm pretty sure you probably even could get it at Walgreens, like at a pharmacy. But I got this at, I think it was at the physical therapist's, the shop in there. So what this does is these different knobs go on different parts of your body. So when we're stitching and we get a cramp or our shoulder or our neck feels tight, you put the ball right against that spot that's tight, and then you pull these two handles, you pull it away from you, and it puts that pressure, oh man, it puts that pressure right there. Oh, that feels so good. And so it's provides a, oh wow, it provides a pressure point and releases any tightness. Yes, 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 that is pretty darn good, isn't it? And so you can move it around. You can do it on your legs, your back, but I find it the most beneficial in the shoulder blade area and the lower neck area. You will know when you hit the sweet spot. But when I do a lot of sewing or stitching, that's why it's hanging there on that rack. So yes, it's called a theracane. A theracane. Okay. So once I get this done, and once I get back home and I get this done, I have been thinking so much about future quilts that I want to make. And there's, and you know, I haven't made quilts for every family member because, you know, it takes time and you don't think about it, and suddenly you're retired, you've got a lot of time, you've got a lot of fabric, and kids are only growing up. So you think, well, I gotta move this fabric out one way or another. So I do have a dream. I have the Jolly Bar books from Fat Quarter Shop, and I do have a dream of making a French themed or Paris themed quilt in my future. Not quite sure when. And yeah, so trying to figure out what what I'm going to, you know, it's like your mind just goes in circles. And as I was pulling fabrics out and restacking them and refolding them and introducing myself to them again, because, you know, it's true, you forget what you have. I got very excited again about hexes, and with the whole stitching with the Sisterlies quilt tube, the idea of being able to gather together and figure out some hand working things that I want to do. See, look at this here. See, this is a pillow I did. This is a crabapple hill, and I put SF101 on the back of this before I embroidered it. And this is a pattern that she has, and I used the color crayon method, which now she is using colored pencils, but I use the color crayon so you can see right, you know, how the shading is done, and it's so much fun. So I made a pillow. I even made the piping, and that's that's the thing for me, is I love all kinds of fiber art. It really doesn't, it doesn't matter what it is. I enjoy it. And the more community or the ability for us to share and inspire each other, to me, is like, it is so, so worth it. I have gone on to a new book that I really can't stop listening to. It is, that's what I do a lot of times here in the Beehive, is I'll either be watching something on the computer, or I'm listening to audiobook. And the audiobook I'm listening to now is so good. It is so good. It's called The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. And it's fascinating to me because it's a fiction, but it's taking place in Pennsylvania, in a town that a majority of the inhabitants during that period of time were either Jewish or African American. And their how they cohabitated and how the community functioned back in the 30s, the 20s and 30s. And it's somewhat of a mystery, but it is really good book. And so I have had a hard time not finding reasons to just sit and listen. I haven't seen too much on television except for let's see, we started watching that series Tracker, and that has been entertaining. It has been entertaining. And then, I'm watching Floss Tube, which is the cross stitch community, and then here we have Quilt Tube, Quilt Tube, Floss Tube. So fun. And I'm going down, I signed up for a workshop in Bend, Oregon. It's on May 4th at Cynthia's Sewing Center. And Cynthia's Sewing Center is a sewing machine shop, a long arm shop. It has some cross stitch thread and patterns, and it has embroidery machines. It's an educational center for all of those things, and they're offering a one-day workshop, which is sounds just, it's a reason to get together. It's a reason to get together. And they're providing lunch and then just a fun time. So I am looking forward to doing that. Other than that, it's just one foot in front of the other here in the Beehive, and planning on to continue folding fabric and figuring out what the next quilt is going to be, and being inspired by all of my quilty friends. And I found a whole container of fabric and the things that you need to make bags. So I'm like, oh, I should do that too. I should do it all, shouldn't I? Yeah, it's been great. I did get to the mailbox, and I did find a couple of emails in the spam folder of my email for people who had won previous giveaways, and so I went down to the post office and mailed those off. I asked the postal employee that was helping me, what are the chances do you think this will get to Malaysia? And he said, well, it should take 7 to 10 days, but we'll see. So keeping my fingers crossed for that one. Okay. Well, thank you for hanging out with me. I really do appreciate all of company, the company. And if you could double check, all you have to do to double check is hit that subscribe button, because about half of the comments that come through I can tell are not subscribers. There's a way to tell that. And so if you would just do that for me, I would so appreciate it. Nothing happens, you know, it's just a matter. And if you subscribe and they ask you to subscribe publicly, that would be great, because then I can find you if I need to, if you've won something. So thank you so much. You know how much I love you guys. You guys take care, and hopefully the sun is shining in your part of the world.